on the day IBM came calling. It was the event which dogged him his entire life, and it has become a legend in personal computer history. But his friends and co-workers alike agree that the story is mostly myth, and that the facts are very different.
Gary and I were scheduled to go that morning up to meet with Bill Godbout, who was one of the early people in the microcomputer industry building an S100 system, and we were delivering him CPM documentation. So Gary and I, as the story goes, were in fact flying. We flew up to the Bay Area, up to the Oakland airport, delivered the software to Bill, and flew back down and joined the IBM meeting. We were there for the meeting later in the afternoon. By that point in time, things had already gone a little bit wrong. IBM had come into the meeting. They had a what I would call a unidirectional non-disclosure agreement. The idea was that Digital Research was to agree that they had never met IBM and the meeting hadn't occurred, and yet everything that Digital Research disclosed to IBM was intended to be public domain. That was the way the agreement was structured.
IBM also wanted to buy CPM outright for a flat fee and rename it PC-DOS, terms that were unacceptable to DRI. IBM then approached Microsoft and tried to license its clone of CPM called QDOS. When IBM discovered that it might be facing a copyright lawsuit, they returned to DRI and struck a deal. DRI agreed to let IBM sell both CPM and Microsoft DOS side by side, and to let the market decide which was best. But the deck was stacked.
I can only tell you that we were quite shocked to see that the price for PC-DOS was $40 and the price for CPM 86 was $240. We were given no indication at all whatsoever until it was actually rolled out that they were going to do a 6-to-1 price difference. So in fact, IBM did let the market decide. It was pretty hard to imagine that somebody could justify buying CPM 86, which had very similar functionality to PC-DOS, when there was a 6-to-1 price difference.
Some industry people have pointed to this incident as a turning point in PC history, and the moment that guaranteed the demise of CPM and the rise of MS-DOS. Others have pointed out that it somehow changed Gary, professionally and personally.
The frustration that I think more and more frustrated, and to a degree I have to be honest about, embittered him some in later years, was the fact that he continually had this comparison thrust on him. That anytime he would have an interview or meet a company in a business context, there were the frequent questions: did you really go flying when IBM came to visit? What really happened? So that would frequently be asked, and that was always a frustration, because Gary was a person that I think was very proud of his achievements, of the fact that he actually was instrumental in building this open architecture that we have in the industry.
I think Gary's view was that what happened happened. I think he, if anything, regretted that people didn't appreciate the contributions he made. I think all people who are really driven to do something and who are very bright spend some time wondering about the ones that got away. But I think of all the people I've known in business, Gary worried the least about the ones that got away.
DRI's loss of the IBM contract was Microsoft's gain, and the beginning of Microsoft's ascent to software stardom. But the reasons for IBM's decisions are still fuzzy and subject to different interpretations.
I think what really changed the perspective from IBM's standpoint had to do with the fact that when Gates got involved, he basically said, look, we'll do whatever you need. We'll put energy, we'll put people, we'll work as hard as we can to make this happen. As opposed to the way Gary Kildall and his folks looked at it, which was, oh, here's another project. Remember, Kildall had already reached a certain level of success at that point, where at this particular time, Gates and the folks at Microsoft were in their very early stages.
But I think that there's also some, I don't think blame's exactly the right word, but some responsibility goes to the customers as well. Because if IBM had not put all of their eggs in the Microsoft basket, they wouldn't have the problem that they do today, trying to sell Warp against, an OS2 against the monster that they kind of created.
Whatever the reason, the competition between DRI and Microsoft seemed to become a personal battle between Gary Kildall and Bill Gates, at least in the public eye.
Well, Gary always considered Bill Gates a very good friend. In those early days, they all they all were very friendly with each other and cooperative. And certainly Bill Gates says today that he sent IBM to DRI when they were looking for the operating system. I was on a panel that Ben Rosen put on for the Rosen Forum in those very early days. And Gary got up and talked about what his plans were for CPM and where the company was going, and then made a comment. Well, this is a very large market, and there's room for lots of companies. And Bill Gates interrupted, and he said, no, there'll only be one company.
Gary Kildall's life cannot be summed up by any one incident. It was made up of many notable accomplishments and a constant desire to innovate. His numerous contributions to the PC industry are evident, if not always recognized. To those who knew him well, it was the delight of discovery, and not the money, that drove him.
And I think that in his mind, what he was always looking for is, what is it that he could get or do or create with the technology that would be his big win? And that was elusive. And in fact, the fact that it was elusive, I think, played very heavily on the way he lived the latter part of his life.
Gary Kildall's untimely death in 1994 at the age of 52 was a reminder that the light of genius is transitory and fragile. To his many friends and associates, it was a warning that we should cherish our relationships while we can.
He is among a very small group of people that helped change the world in the 70s, and I think another group of people have taken advantage of it in the 80s and the 90s, and I'm sure that will continue. But Gary made a difference. I think he knew he made a difference, and certainly the people who knew Gary knew he made a difference.
I think at this point in time it would be a shame to have Gary forgotten as being a person that was instrumental to the growing of this whole industry itself. Gary was somebody that had an infectious enthusiasm. If you go out in the industry and talk with associates that he worked with at a business level, knew Gary as a person that enjoyed the warmth of human contact, that enjoyed going to parties, to be very personable. He was not somebody that restricted his focus to just the decision makers and the people that were leading the businesses and whatever. He was somebody that had a breadth of interests and was a very open person. So I think it would be a real loss if all that the industry remembers about Gary is he was the guy that was flying the day IBM came. Because he was a much more of a person and contributed a great deal to this industry.
Gary did make a difference. He was a genius and a gentleman, a rare combination. Gary did make a lot of money, but he was driven by an honest desire to create new ideas that could expand the human potential. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Stuart Chaffee. The Computer Chronicles is brought to you by Ron Diamond.